The think tank was charged with proposing a plan to improve early learning instruction through more effective and efficient use of student-centered assessment. This group of teachers, parents, and scholars met over a 9-month period to review scientific findings and best practices and solicited input from stakeholders across the state. The executive summary highlights the research, proposal, recommendations, and claims made by the think tank. One of the major findings of the think tank is how very important the early years are in educational development. Achievement gaps that grow during the years prior to kindergarten are either solidified or eliminated during the primary grades of elementary school. Therefore, education policy must increase its emphasis on student learning during this critical period in a way that recognizes each child's developmental needs. If you're following along in the report, you will find the research cited on page 3. The second scientific finding from the executive summary of the think tank report states that to optimize student learning, teachers need to utilize a formative assessment process. A formative assessment process identifies strengths and areas for growth for each student in 5 domains of learning. Master teachers have been using a formative assessment process for years because it has been shown to improve learning outcomes. The third finding from the think tank report addresses North Carolina teachers. Input from teachers across the state indicates they are willing and able to implement a formative assessment process, provided they are given resources to strengthen, support, and guide them. With this information in mind, recommendations from the think tank include a thoughtful implementation plan that includes professional development, coaching, and support from leadership in addition to providing both human and technical resources as teachers and students collaborate in the formative assessment process. So far, we have talked about the research and some of the recommendations put forth by the think tank. By now, you have probably become aware of the think tank's proposal, especially if you've been a participant at previous webinars. The think tank proposed a formative assessment process that engages teachers and students, intended to be ongoing and an integral part of the instructional and learning process. In addition, the formative assessment process will be based on claims about student learning in 5 interrelated domains, which Erica is going to review.
Thank you, Nancy. The K-3 formative assessment is a whole child perspective and addresses the 5 domains of learning and development. We need to support and attend to children's growth and development in all of these areas. How well a child performs in one area impacts how well they'll perform in others, which could ultimately affect whether or not they reach their potential goal and can become lifelong learners. We're going to spend this part of the webinar unpacking each domain by looking at the claims. The overall claims are the broad goals for each domain. So in just a minute, we'll ask you to share what stands out to you about the claims within each domain. Let's see if we can identify the key ideas in the claims for approaches to learning. So take a moment to read the claims, and then select one word or phrase that stands out to you, and then just type it in the question box. The approaches to learning domain addresses how children learn, and it includes their attitude and their interest toward learning. It reflects behaviors and skills such as curiosity, planning, flexibility, motivation, focus, and persistence. In just a minute, I'm going to ask you to review the claims, but before we begin, I'd like to take a few minutes to review 2 key words in claim number 1. Claim number 1 has to do with problem solving, and while we've been working in the field, several people have asked for clarification on content specific and the word content independent. So I'd like to provide you with an example that will hopefully clarify these concepts. So let's say someone has invited your family to a family reunion in Florida. To actually plan for the trip to Florida, you would need content-specific information about Florida. So the content-specific information you would need would be weather, geography, wildlife, and just specific facts about Florida. Then once you have that information, then you can use your content-independent abilities to plan the trip successfully. So you'll be using being able to multitask, organize, plan, think through the process, meet deadlines, and then be able to have a successful trip to Florida for you and your family. So let's see if we can identify the key ideas in the claims for cognitive development domain. So again, if you'll just take a moment to read these claims and select one word or phrase and just type that into the question box. The cognitive development domain focuses on children's ability to acquire, organize, and use information in increasingly complex ways. In their search for understanding and meaning, young children play an active role in their own cognitive development. They begin to explain, organize, construct, and predict skills that lay the cognitive foundation needed to explore and understand increasingly sophisticated concepts and the world in which they live. They learn to apply prior knowledge to new experiences and then use this information to refine their understanding of concepts as well as to form new understanding. So now I'm going to pass it to Karen as she goes over our next domain.
Thanks, Erica. Now we're going to look at the third domain of development, which is the emotional social developmental domain. And if you'll look up and see if you can identify the key ideas in the claims for emotional social domain. Just take a moment. And as you're reading, select one word or a phrase that stands out for you, and if you'll type it into the question box. The emotional social developmental domain includes children's feelings about themselves and also addresses their ability to relate to others. Learning to manage and express emotions is also a part of this domain. Children's development in this domain affects their development in every other domain. For instance, children who develop a positive sense of self are more likely to try new things and work towards reaching goals. They tend to accept new challenges and they feel more confident about their ability to handle problems or difficulties that may arise. The fourth domain we're going to look at is health and physical development. So let's see if we can identify the key ideas in this claim. Take a moment and read over the claims. And as you're reading, select one word or phrase that stands out for you and go ahead and type it into the question box. The domain of health and physical development focuses on physical growth and motor development, sound nutritional choices, self-care, and health and safety practices. This domain is the foundation for the future health and well-being of all children. Good physical health and motor development supports children's learning and plays a part in their ability to be successful in almost any type of activity. And now Nancy's going to talk to you about our last domain.
Thank you, Karen. The fifth domain is the language development and communication domain. Again, let's see if we can identify the key ideas in the claims by taking a moment or two to read the claims and then selecting a word or a phrase that stands out for you to type into the question box. The language development and communication domain focuses on the foundational skills that children acquire and use in early elementary school and which continue to develop throughout their schooling. These skills include speaking, listening, reading, and writing. This domain encompasses nonverbal and verbal language skills used in understanding language and speaking effectively with others, as well as important emergent literacy skills in early reading and writing. This domain provides an integrated approach for understanding and supporting language and literacy development in young children.